Hi there, Man Alive listener. This is your host, Shayna James. You may or may not know that I started a new podcast. It's called Practicing Love, Have the Best Love and Sex of Your Life After 40. I wanted to post a few episodes over here so you can get a feel for the new podcast and hopefully subscribe to it so you don't miss any of the new episodes. I'm excited to build on Man Alive and support people, all people, with love and relationships, dating and sex, and what it takes to not only keep love and sex alive, but to actually have the best love and sex of your life, especially in midlife and beyond. Though to be honest, whatever age you are, there will be powerful information for you there. So I hope you enjoy this episode of Practicing Love, and feel free to reach out with questions and ahas and also topics you'd like to see covered there. If you haven't yet taken the quiz to see what keeps you from having the best love and sex of your life, go to shaynajamescoaching.com/quiz. You'll get a personalized report of your strengths and challenges in the 5 crucial areas that lead to your most fulfilling and exciting love and sex life. Go to shaynajamescoaching.com/quiz to find out. Hello and welcome to this episode of Man Alive. I'm your host, Shayna James, and I'm thrilled to be here today to talk about a topic that most of us want to keep learning about, even if we think it's too taboo to talk about. And that is sex, and going back to some of the things that make sex greater, especially for you as a man, because we recognize that there is a lot of pressure, there's a lot of competition, and the alpha dog and the right ways to do it and the man box and all these things that you can get stuck inside of. And so I have an amazing woman here who is very aligned with me in making things better for you and knowing that when things are better for you, things are better for your partners and the world. We love it. So Caitlin V is the author of Harder, Better, Longer, Stronger. And she has an amazing YouTube channel with tons of videos. There is the book if you're watching the video. She's a sex and relationship coach, and she's a delightful human being. So thank you so much for being here and for all the work that you have done.
Thank you. And thank you for all of your kind words. I'm very excited to be here.
Yay. Well, why don't you start with something that excites you about your history or what got you to the place of being a sex and relationship coach?
So I knew from a very young age that this is what I was going to do for a living. I didn't know exactly how, but I knew that sexuality was my calling and my interest and my passion, even before I had sex. And I was such a little sex nerd, even in high school, that in my planner, when I did eventually have like penetrative sex with my high school boyfriend, I took notes. I labeled. I have had little codes for different kinds of orgasms and positions that we tried. And so I was just born to do this. Didn't come from like a traumatic place. I've had my fair share of trauma since then, but my interest was really genuine and pure and naive and just, like I said, this is what I came here to do. It took a little bit of time to figure out how to do it. And
to legally be able to do it because you were very young at that.
Yes. Yeah. I was a very unofficial sex researcher before I actually did become a professional researcher later. I have a master's degree in public health. I was working on my doctorate in public health. Amazing. I left that in order to pursue a career in coaching because I wanted to be more one-on-one with the people that I was interested in serving. When you're in the ivory tower, you don't really get to see the impact of your work. And often I felt like I was publishing studies for other professional sexual health researchers to read. And it was not necessarily going to actually trickle down in the form of policy changes or to the people who would actually most be affected by that work. So I left to start coaching. But the most surprising and interesting part of that is how I ended up coaching men. Because the short story is that I was invited to someone else's YouTube channel to make a video about female ejaculation. And that video went as good as viral back in 2015. Yep. And I had overnight hundreds and then thousands of men reaching out to me for help, for coaching, for education. It was a very natural next step for me to start my own YouTube channel. And it's still true today, but even more so 10 years ago, YouTube was primarily dominated by men and women were mostly on Facebook and then Instagram. And so it was just a combination of things that had me discover how much I loved working with men early on. And I just continued to answer the call as it was showing up for me. And here we are 10 years later, and I've been focused almost exclusively on coaching and working with men for a decade now. And it's been such a tremendous privilege.
And so it's so exciting. I love it, because I also, right, primarily have focused on men after many years of creating courses and things for women. But there was something that happened for me too, where it felt like it was a calling. My eyes were opened actually when I was facilitating workshops and getting to be with men who were opening up and being vulnerable about sex and intimacy and what wasn't going well. And it just blew my heart open. And I could tell it was a calling somehow, but I could also see like, oh, I'm getting to hear and see things and know things about men that most women and people on the planet never get to hear. And to get to bring that back, right, to others and to the world and to stand for men has been such an honor. And, there's so many great men out there. So I'm so glad we're doing this together. I want to go back to your story. What blew my mind was that you were saying you were already tracking different types of orgasms when you were in high school. Can you say, what were you tracking back then?
Yeah. So I am definitely the kind of person who likes to dive in with both feet. I learned that more, I'd say like intensely recently because I've been working on a course on group sex and orgies and threesomes and swinging. And as I've been working on the course, I've been kind of like confronted with how much I have just put myself into situations and been like, I'll figure it out. And now that I'm making a course kind of directed at people to like prevent them from making those same mistakes, I'm like, oh my gosh.
So you have,
I'm like, I just keep going and being like, I can't believe it was even an option that I never even considered that I could like go slow, ask questions first. And I wish that I had, but I'm pretty tough as it is. So I did. I'm okay. But
that's so interesting too, though. I would say like for me being in the poly or the play world actually taught me so much of those things of, okay, we can, create boundaries. We can talk about this. We can slow it down. So interesting. You just came in and
I came in like a wrecking ball. I was like, okay, we just do it all right now, immediately. Let's go. I mean, I could tell you more spicier stories about my start in there. But to answer your question, I was tracking my orgasm, like number of orgasms, if I had orgasmed through oral sex or through penetration, what positions were working best for me, if he orgasmed, and like things that we tried over time, like where did he ejaculate? And unfortunately, I can't totally make sense of my code now because it's been a while. But it was like full moons, half moons, filled in circles, empty circles. But I do know that I had penetrative sex for the first time, I think on September 24th of my sophomore year in high school. That was so I have it on my calendar every year. I celebrate my sex anniversary.
I love that. I love that. And amazing that you started supporting men with this video about squirting. So what was the draw for them? I mean, obviously I know it is a draw, but can you highlight some of the things that men were asking you or have asked you over the years?
Yeah. So what surprised me about the squirting video is that the men who were coming to me afterward primarily dealt with premature ejaculation. I'd say that was 80% of them were dealing with ejaculating too quickly. And what I put together is that they were interested in squirting as sort of a way of compensating for what they perceived to be a lack of their own, sexual capacity or their ability to maybe pleasure a woman in another way, just through penetration. And they wanted to learn this as an additional skill so that they could be like a better or more impressive lover. And, you mentioned at the top of the show, some of the pressure that men exist under is competition, right?
Yeah.
So I think at the time and still today, there's an idea that, if she's never squirted before, or if you're the one who can like make her have that experience or make her squirt, that you will solidify your place in the rankings of
Uh-huh.
best lover, top lover, best she's ever had. And so squirting itself can really receive sort of like a undue emphasis for
Mm-hmm.
folks. I
Mm-hmm.
like to think that like it's a little bit of a parlor trick because not all women enjoy it or want to do it, but a lot of men kind of strategize around it and want to learn how to make it happen. Not necessarily because their partner is asking for it, although she might discover that she likes it
Yeah.
afterward, but because maybe they have pressure on themselves and they feel like they have something to prove.
Yeah. Yeah. And can we talk a little bit about how, especially we're talking mostly heterosexual relationships here, that we as women can feel that, right? So not to make a man feel bad, but I imagine this is some part of what you covered in your book too. It's like, if you're coming from a strategy or if you're doing this to try to prove something, then it doesn't feel the same. I mean, I know very viscerally in my body, right? When someone's trying to get
And
me to do something.
And it's sort of like, and specifically what I write in the book is the way that actually increases the performance pressure that she feels.
Right.
I think that men's performance pressure is probably like the number one source of faked orgasms because whatever you're feeling, whatever you're bringing into a sexual encounter, you are also putting the other person who you are with in a similar wavelength, in a similar headspace. Like
Right.
we're constantly trying to meet and mirror each other. I mean, this is happening both on a conscious level and on an unconscious level. And so if you are bringing performance pressure and expectations into the bedroom with you, you're actually causing your partner to have to kind of align with that energy
Right.
on their side, whether they're conscious of it or not. And just to make one distinction, like it is okay. It's admirable to want to be great in bed. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that about the men that I get to work with and meet with and coach, that they care so much about pleasuring their partner, about making sex an amazing experience for both people. Most of them, really want to make it amazing for her. There's nothing wrong with wanting to do that.
No.
But to your point, it adds an extra layer into a sexual encounter that as it stands doesn't actually improve the encounter itself.
Right. It's counterintuitive. And one of the things I love working with men in this way is supporting men to realize that their pleasure, right, for you listening, like your pleasure actually adds to the experience versus I'm going to leave my body to try to go over there to her to imagine what she wants and needs and then give her pleasure, right? It's this whole thing where it's so beautiful when it comes together and you recognize, oh, my pleasure creates her pleasure, right? There's this system, for lack of a better word.
Symbiotic relationship.
Yes.
Because it stands to reason that if pressure begets more pressure, then pleasure begets pleasure.
Yes. Yes. Beautiful. So you recently wrote Harder, Better, Longer, Stronger.
I wrote a book.
So exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you.
What are you most proud of about it?
Oh my gosh. The fact that it even exists. Getting to this point where the book is published and in the world was a tremendous challenge in terms of overcoming people's stories and expectations regarding men. So when I had the book proposal and I started shopping it to agents, and I heard over and over again, I love the book. I wish it existed. I could see 5 men in my life who would benefit from it. But unfortunately, men don't buy books. And so I'm not going to represent it. And then when I finally did get an agent, her name's Danny Siegelbaum at ARC Literary. She's amazing. She saw the book. She became its immediate champion. She understood the need and the opportunity, and she signed on right away. And then she took this book to several publishers and like the biggest publishing houses. And mind you, I've got a TV show under my belt. I have a million subscribers across platforms. Like we had evidence that men were interested in this information and that I had a machine that could market and sell and deliver discover this book. Like there was no question that there was an audience of people who were interested in this book, and I had a direct connection with them. But each of the publishers said to me the same thing: men don't buy books. And then they would say, and no one wants a book on men's sexuality.
That's
And
so horrible.
it was so disheartening to hear over and over and over again, especially because I had already invested a lot of time and energy and money just to getting to the proposal stage. I mean, every part, this book took from inception
blood,
to
sweat,
publication,
tears, right?
2 years and 8 months to get into the world. So it's a very slow.
Fast,
that actually was very fast. Yeah, it was. They actually, when I look back on it and I hear about other people's, but it was because the publisher and the overall publishing landscape was operating under the assumption that we can't actually release too many books about sex and about men's sexuality. And there was already another book that was slated that's being published after mine on men's sexuality. And so they wanted to put these two books like 6 months apart on the calendar. And so mine had to come first. So we were kind of which was fine. I had an amazing team. We were able to produce the book very quickly. But when it finally landed with Hay House, who eventually published the book, they also had the same reaction of like, yes, this should exist. We agree that you can bring this out into the world, that you're the right person to do it, and we're the right publisher to do it. And actually, they had been my first choice. They're not necessarily like a Simon and Schuster or like one of the other. No, they're owned by Penguin Random House, but I probably own more Hay House published books than any other single publisher. I was extremely delighted to have them take the book on, because I felt that they and their team and their overall ethos and their mission was aligned with what I wanted to create, and who I wanted the book to be like held and championed by, because a lot of hands go into creating a book, and I was just very fortunate that after all of the rejection, it found the perfect home. But after that, everything was like a cakewalk, because it was 10 years of my work with men that I just had, that was like existing inside of my head and sort of scrambled about on notes throughout my life and laptop and tons of physical journals and stuff. And downloading that, taking it out of my head and putting it into 75,000 words in book form was actually really joyful. And, I don't want to say it was easy, but it was certainly like the easier part of the process.
The easier part of it. Yeah. Okay, what are some of your favorite parts of the book, or the parts that you are most excited for men to learn from?
Oh my God, I'm looking around because I actually have a copy of the book that has a bunch of tabs in it for my highlighted pieces, but I guess I'll just go off of memory. I do know this book pretty well. So the book is organized in the same it follows the same process that I walk my individual clients through in coaching. And the way that I do that is to start with the physical body, because that's the home of everything else. And if you don't have your physical health or some awareness of what's going on inside of your body, we're not building on a solid foundation.
Yes.
So I always send my individual clients, I ask them to go get blood tests. I ask them to get hormone work done, especially if there's anything that indicates that. But even if there isn't, I want them to know and have a great relationship with their physical body. So it even includes a script that you can take to your doctor's office to make sure that you're touching on all the things that are really important to your sexual health.
I'll also say that this is such a gift, because there are so many men who avoid, you guys, I love you. And it's really important to go to the doctor and to have regular checkups.
So important. And if you're not going to do it for anything else,
die young because of not getting checked up.
And totally preventable things. And I've tried to make it as easy as possible. If you won't do it for your dick, what will you do it for? And then we move from the physical body to the emotional body, the mind. We go through the understanding where you've been and the influence of early sexual experiences. We move into the understanding the culture in which you were raised, the home in which you were raised, the ways that sex connects to and aligns with your spirituality and the thing about you that is like beyond your physical body.
Yes.
And then we ultimately take it to your relationship. And the reason that and then sex life design is sort of where we end. But the reason that we kept relationship towards the end is that a lot of people come to me for coaching, and, the first words out of their mouth are like my wife or my partner or my ex-girlfriend, right? And sexuality starts with you. It's always yours, and it's something that you share with other people, but it is something you're born with and something that you die with. And so I wanted to make the book really emphasize all the things that an individual person can do to improve their sex life, to improve their sexual relationship, and yes, even to improve their marriage or their dating or make them more confident about finding a relationship. But, eventually
you have to look inside first. You can't just be looking for that other person over there.
Exactly. And maybe if I write a second book, maybe it will be it'll be the continuation. We'll pick up right where we left off and talk about relationships. So in short though, what were my favorite parts of that? One of my favorite chapters is the cultural engine chapter, because that is where I get to address and dispel I was going to say favorite, but my least favorite myth. That I see all the time. And, I've been on the internet as a public figure for 10 years. So I have pretty much, I need to stop reading the comments. I'm so feisty. My team all the time is like, don't look at the comments, but I love them and I want to get into fights with people. And, but instead I just address that in the myth section, because I see the same comments over and over and over again, the same objections, the same reasons, quote unquote, stories that it won't work or it doesn't work, or you don't know what you're talking about. That men always want sex and women rarely do. Or that men's bodies are easy and men's orgasms are straightforward, but women's bodies are complicated and women's sexuality is complex. When we divide people into those categories, we are leaving out the fact that not all women's sexuality is complex or complicated or feels that way to them. And
many men's are.
Exactly. We make this very unfair cultural expectation that men's sexuality should just be straightforward, or else there's something wrong with you if you're struggling. And the truth is that 1/3 of men deal with early ejaculation, and 40% of men in their 40s are dealing with some form of erectile dysfunction, and it only increases from there on average with age. So it's actually very common for men to have sexual challenges. And anyways, it goes on from there.
Interesting. I can see where in the cultural stories, we've separated complicated sexuality from sexual challenges. I don't know why, but that's really interesting, right? It's almost as though, right. Then, if it's not easy for a man, or if there is a challenge, I don't know if it's a pride thing or what, but it's really fascinating that we don't look at it the same way.
Right. And because of that, men feel isolated. They think that they're the only ones that are dealing with the thing that they're dealing with. There's a tremendous amount of shame and secrecy around that does not need to exist, and really only serves to keep individual men from getting the kind of support that would make their challenges that could significantly address their challenges. In the time that I have been coaching and the 300 people who I have worked with, I have only ever found that maybe 1 out of 100 men that's dealing with some form of sexual dysfunction, usually often premature ejaculation, but also erectile dysfunction, delayed ejaculation, libido challenges, etc., cannot find significant improvement with behavioral changes, mental and emotional skills, techniques and tools, communication tools, and then a bit of support from the medical industry. But unfortunately, so much of our culture and our sort of MO, especially in the Western world, especially in the United States, is to start with the doctor's office, go directly for a prescription or a pill or a treatment, and then feel even worse and even more broken when that doesn't solve the problem, even though your erections were never, your ED is never caused by a lack of Viagra, right? No. That's not the place where you're going to have the most effective interventions. Certainly for those men who need them, absolutely. But the majority of men can have an exceptional sex life by just putting some time, energy, and guided attention on it for 3 to 6 months.
Yeah. It's
Or
so
reading 75,000 words and applying it to yourself. Like,
right. I mean, going back to the men not feeling alone or like something's wrong with them, because I was divorced, I think I was in my late 30s. So I basically dated in every decade of my life. And as I'm now almost 50, I've dated men in their 40s and 50s and 60s. And when I tell men that almost every man, I think every man I've been with in the beginning, especially as we're getting older, has had erection challenges, and that most of it was emotional, most men are shocked. They're like, wait a minute, why have I never heard that? Like, I've been feeling horrible about myself. And I'm like, well, especially, as we get older, and that's another thing I've seen in my coaching practice is that men come to me feeling like there's something wrong because my body isn't working. I'm not getting as turned on. And then when we get into the fact that they need a more emotional connection or a more intimate connection, it's kind of shocking. Like, well, but I never needed it in my past. And it's like, well, yes. And you're changing, you're growing, you're deepening, right? And you need it now.
Yeah. And in your past, you were perhaps so flush with hormones that were
Yes.
trying to help you to get your genetic material out of your body so that you could procreate. And, after about the age of 35, the body is not the same. And this is where
Yeah.
I think I talk a lot, and it's not so much in the book, but in my work and when I train coaches, on the difference between alpha and beta bias, which comes actually from a feminist scholarship around medical research that was going on in the 80s. And essentially what they said is that sometimes they'd be testing out a new prescription drug. And if they were looking at it with through one of these two lenses, alpha bias is exaggerating the differences between men and women, and beta bias is blurring the differences between men and women. So they take a prescription drug and they'd say, this only works in male bodies. We're not going to test it in female bodies, even though women might benefit. That's alpha bias. Or if they say, well, men's dosage is 100 milligrams, so let's just give women 75. And then like women were literally dying.
Don't even
That's
test that.
beta
Just
bias.
assume
Right.
that. Wow.
Assume that they're fine, right? So I love this as a framework that we can apply to all things wherever there's a gender difference, but especially in sexuality, which is to say, what are the ways that men and women are very similar? And what are the ways that we are actually legitimately different? And we've categorized emotions and energetic connections and spiritual and, closeness as feminized, right? But that is falling into the alpha bias that is suggesting that if those things are true for women, they can't also be true for men, and men should be, more physical and more like machines, and you put the arousal tokens in and you get the erection out. And that's categorically false. And individual men recognize that something doesn't work for them, but because they haven't been allowed to associate themselves with those other things that are associated more with women's sexuality, they misdiagnose and, instead they seek for the solutions that have been offered to them, which often is prescription drugs.
Right. And feel wrong. And I just thought, oh my gosh, those things are superpowers, right? The men who are already attuned to their own body and sensuality and spirituality and all the things, who can feel energy. It's like superpowers to actually create more. I talk about in my book, Honest Sex, right? This 4-dimensional sex where you have the physical, the emotional, the energetic, the spiritual. And then actually, I think you'll get this. It's like, it's actually 16 dimensions because, each of those you're feeling each other's and that, the building of that. And it's like, it's such a tragedy to me that men have been told that those things are feminine or, those aren't what they should be.
Mm-hmm. And then even more to like compound that tragedy, because it's like fractals, right? It's just like always gets bigger. It's like a tesseract of experience. They will unnecessarily withhold themselves or withdraw from relationships. Sometimes that's withdrawing like from a marriage. Sometimes that's taking themselves out of the dating pool entirely, instead of beginning an honest reflection with like allowing themselves some grace for being human. I like to say that the actual subtitle of my book, or like the actual theme, is like, surprise, men are people too. And I say that like tongue in cheek, but that is what the book is saying. Is like you are a whole person with a mind and with emotions, and I write in the book like,
right? You matter. We care. Like, you're not just this scientific specimen, right? Like, you are a human being with a heart and soul, and we want you to be happy and have pleasure and all the things.
Right. And please listen to this, because I think increasingly in the media landscape that I am witnessing and plugged into, I see, increasingly creators using playing into this sort of narrative of like a gender war in order to get clicks and views. And yes, of course, thinking about men or women as the enemy is a very simplified way to stoke anger, stoke emotion, get people to watch. It is way more difficult to consider a like middle path, a nuanced view of like no one here is the enemy and no one here is a villain or a victim. Yep. And instead, we all share a common goal. Men and women want to have healthy, happy, fulfilling, and sustained romantic and sexual relationships. Not all men and not all women, but many of us, perhaps most of us, really, really want that. And we have to be we have to police our own minds and our own behaviors in order to be really aware of where we are being pulled away from what it is that we want, or sold a narrative that benefits someone, not us, as to why we cannot have it.
Yeah, that's so important. And it's just, it breaks my heart thinking about, I think of it as a crisis, right? We are in a crisis where men and women and people who want heterosexual relationships are pitted against each other. I've often thought of it like if we could do some kind of reparations or something happened in South America and in South Africa, right? It's like, can we bring people together and actually hash this out and find the shared humanity, because it's killing all of us.
Yeah, it really is. And it exacerbates every other social ill that we face. The loneliness epidemic, but also the things that come as a downstream effect of that, like the increasing number of young men being addicted to online gambling, and like all of these things that look individual in nature when we isolate them from the whole. But in truth, they're all very, very deeply connected. And of course, this is my bias, but I think that we would all be a lot happier and healthier if we were able to restore sexuality and restore romantic relationships to being honorable and noble goals, and normalized the pursuit of those things. In fact, very funnily, a friend of mine, a friend said to my partner yesterday, and he shared with me this morning, he said, I caught up with this guy who's got a girlfriend now. And the direct quote was, "I wasn't depressed. I was just full of cum." And I thought, that is, I think, like 6 words that says it all. Like, he really put it succinctly. And I think we can all relate in some way or another, or we know of someone who can relate to that sentiment.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, what I love about this, because sometimes I've had a fear that when I talk about sex, people will see me as shallow, which I don't see you as shallow. So I don't know where that comes from exactly. But the more we talk about it, and the more every time I talk about it, I'm like, it's not shallow. It is some of the deepest, right, parts of our heart and soul, and the most vulnerable and naked parts of ourselves that we're putting out there. Yeah. And when we can actually be loved and, touched and understood, both physically and emotionally, life is really different, and it has far-reaching effects.
I like to think about it like this. There are many, many on-ramps to personal development. Some people get there because they want to address their relationship with money. Some people get there because they want to have a better relationship with their parents or their family. Some folks jump on because they realize that they want to have a smoother relationship with their colleagues and employees. There's no wrong reason to start self-reflecting. And I use the term personal development here very broadly. Yeah. But I see sex as one of the most fun and pleasurable and exciting on ramps to personal development. And, even though sex is sort of like the shingle that I hang out on my YouTube channel and what I'm known for, eventually every single one of my coaching clients says to me, hey, this really isn't about sex, is it?
Yes,
It's not.
totally.
Because guess what? Good news. Your body is literally designed and evolved unbroken chain of evolution all the way back to early sexual reproduction, at least 400,000 years of Homo sapiens.
Yes.
Your body knows how to do sex, just the way that it knows how to digest and sleep, right?
Yep.
And without the things that we introduce throughout our lives and our culture that block those things, your body will restore to doing those things the way that it naturally does. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to naturally and immediately be able to last 20 minutes in bed. You got to train some of these reflexes, but just the same way that you train to run or you stop eating dairy if it doesn't agree with you. Like, you make little adjustments so that the body can do the thing that it is designed to do and is really good at doing. Yes. So my job as a coach is to help people clear out all of the things that are in the way, the things that they made up through their personal experiences that aren't like factually accurate but feel true. Yep. The things that they absorbed through osmosis, through their home life, the messages that their parents or their caregivers gave them about sex, the messages that they absorbed through the media. Once we ungunk all of that, not only do we have someone who is capable of being with themselves, being with other people, being vulnerable, being self-expressed. But that translates so far outside of the bedroom or outside of a primary romantic attachment that they find that the other things that they wanted, like smoother relationships with their colleagues, more forgiveness for their parents, a better relationship with money, come as a result of this particular excavation.
Yes. Yeah. Right. It's such a microcosm, right? This one way. And I love how you said it. It's like, this is one of the best on-ramps to self-reflection. It's one of the most pleasurable ones. And right, so many things get to change because we're navigating. I was talking to a client recently about really about erotic energy and how so many of us were trained that once you have this erotic energy or let's just call it that in your body, that you're supposed to disperse it, right? It means let me go have an experience so that I can climax and then I can get back to this normalcy, as opposed to, wow, what happens when I expand my capacity to be with this energy in the world and to, right? And it's not just sex, it's vitality that you get to bring to every area of your life. So yes, 100% I agree.
Your ability to be with discomfort is probably one of the greatest indicators of the quality of the life that you're going to live. So whether that is, quitting nicotine and being able to be uncomfortable, without a cigarette, or, training that on a larger capacity, being with someone's big emotions. A lot of men in my coaching really struggle to be with a woman who's having a big emotion, right? And they'll collapse or they try to make it stop or whatever, and if you want a great example, one thing that I used to do with all my clients and I'm back into now is like cold showers and, or cold plunges if you can do it. I actually had to cut back on cold plunging because again, circling back to me just jumping in with both feet, I didn't realize like it's not great for women's bodies to be cold plunging in the second half of our cycle and for under 45 degrees and for 5 minutes. But I was like, I'm a warrior. I can do this. And I was like, why don't I feel, I literally made myself sick because I was overly cold plunging. But still do it. It's still good for men, especially. But like training your body to be with discomfort, even in a symbolic sense, like what is the relationship between cold plunging and sex? More than you'd expect, because it's just your ability to handle and be with discomfort and know on a very deep level that you are okay.
Yes. And I love that you're bringing it to the dynamic, not only with being with your discomfort, but being able to sit with someone else's discomfort and not need to fix it or tie it up in a nice, neat little box, but to actually be there connected to someone, emotionally available. Also, right, impacts your sex life, because I know, and I've talked about this with many guests, where some of the best experiences, and this is true for me personally too, some of the best sexual experiences are not just happy-go-lucky, right? There are tears, there's intensity, there's a whole wide range of expression. And if you can't sit with a woman's expression just, on the couch when she's having feelings, you're not going to get that in the bedroom.
Yeah, I mean, one of the greatest ways to unlock female arousal is through containment and presence. You would be surprised. I've been thinking about this a lot recently too, because I put a poll on my Patreon like last week, and it was essentially like, what's the biggest thing that gets you in your head and out of your body during sex? And one of the responses was a man saying, like, you don't get it. Essentially, I have to perform in order to get her interested. Like, I have to, in order to like have sex, I need to put on a show, and I have to put on this performance to like arouse her. But one of the greatest lessons that I've learned from my own experience is actually, if I feel like totally contained and safe with a partner, and I just feel like his unconditional love and presence with me, then arousal happens naturally. Arousal is a freight train of consequences. Like, he makes me feel safe and contained and loved, and he can maintain like stillness in his presence. I don't even, it's not even about wanting to get aroused or not. Arousal happens.
Yeah. And I will say, in my perimenopausal phase, it can happen differently, or in some of those moments, it might take a little longer, or it takes stillness, emotion, stillness, right? Like, it can take traveling through a wide range of those experiences. But with a man who can be there and be steady in all of that, as opposed to check out or get upset with me or any of that. I mean, that is
to do a bunch of stuff to you to be like, let's make it happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for this conversation. Is there anything you want to leave men with? I know we could talk about this for a lot longer.
Ordinarily, I would say you're not alone, but I think we did a fantastic job of covering that. So what I want to leave men with is an invitation, and that is to do something that is just outside of your comfort zone, not so far that you're going to have a complete like blowback reaction and contraction afterward, but something that's just outside of your comfort zone. You'll be the only one who knows what that is, but something that serves to make a connection with another man on this subject.
I love that.
So my challenge for you, should you choose to accept it, is have a conversation about your sex life, something that you're moving through or dealing with, even part of your romantic relationship. Ask someone about his. Demonstrate that you are a safe space for your brothers to come to and engage with on this subject. Again, to your capacity. Maybe even if you don't have a lot of male friends that you're in communication with, maybe all you do in this area is send a text message to someone and ask if he wants to watch a game next week. Consider that is a step in service to having eventually a more vulnerable conversation on sex and relationships. And if you already text and you hang out and you see each other every week, then maybe the thing that's outside of your comfort zone is saying, hey man, I've been struggling and I've been listening to this podcast and it's really supportive of me and you might want to check it out. Do you ever struggle with these things? Whatever's on the edge of your comfort zone, my invitation, my challenge for you guys is to go ahead and take a action this week in service to bringing this conversation out into the open.
I love this. And if you are in a relationship, talk about something a little bit more vulnerable, something that you might not have talked about, because so many of my clients, when they come to me and I ask them, when was the last time you talked about this with your partner? Sometimes it's never, sometimes it's years, sometimes it's months, but usually it's not very often. And so bring to a partner, a date, and again, you get to figure out what's a little bit more vulnerable for you, because it might be a desire. It might be something that you're learning, right, from podcast. So many things it could be. And like you said, start wherever you are. You don't have to jump into the deep end.
Yeah, I promise that all of the good things in life are on the other side of the conversations you're avoiding.
Awesome. Okay, where can people find you and your book?
You can find the book everywhere that books are sold. And what would be extremely helpful for me and make the biggest difference is if you left a review on Amazon. It would be so helpful in continuing to keep the book up on the Amazon rankings in its category. Reviews make the biggest difference. So please go check out the book. And if you enjoyed it, please leave me a review. You can also watch the over 1,000 1,000 pieces of free content that I have available on YouTube. And if you are interested in any of my courses, I have 14 digital courses. I coach. I have a team of coaches too. You can find all of that at CaitlinVneal.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. And again, for being such a support for men.
Thank you.
I'm so glad you joined us for today's episode of Man Alive. I hope you enjoyed our conversation and it gave you something to consider and explore in your life. If you like what you heard, I'd be so grateful for you to subscribe and write a quick review that helps men like you find us. And again, head over to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz or text the word ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144 to get a sense of how you can become a better lover and leader. You'll start to see how you can be both more respected and desired in your unique and genuine way. If you don't feel as confident or as excited about life or love as you'd like to be, this quiz is a really great starting point and will guide you toward a more passionate love life and a more inspiring and successful career. So again, text ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144 or head over to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz. Join us each week for a new episode of Man Alive.